Welcome back to the channel. Before we begin tonight's chilling story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new horror tale. And I have a question for you. What city are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Leave your answer in the comments below. I read your comments with great excitement, and I love seeing where everyone is watching from around the world. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin tonight's terrifying story. The cookbook was found behind the wall on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Not in a box, not in the attic, inside the wall. My brother Caleb discovered it while fixing a pipe in our grandmother's old kitchen, where the wallpaper peeled in damp yellow curls and the refrigerator hummed like a tired animal. Outside, rain tapped the windows. The whole house smelled of wet leaves, dust, and something sweet rotting under the floorboards. I had only been back in Marrow Creek for 6 days. 6 days since I left my apartment in the city with 2 suitcases, a cracked phone screen, and the final message from my ex still glowing in my head. You'll come back when you realize nobody else understands you. I blocked him, then unblocked him, then blocked him again. That was healing, apparently. Small humiliating choices in the dark. My mother said Thanksgiving would help. Family puts people back together, she told me. But our family had always been better at preserving pain than healing it. Caleb carried the cookbook into the kitchen like it was evidence. The cover was black cloth, swollen from moisture. No title, no author, just our family name pressed into the front in faded gold. Veil. My mother went very still when she saw it. Where did you find that? In the wall. Her lips parted, then closed. A floorboard creaked above us. My niece, Sophie, stood at the top of the stairs in pink socks, watching. She was 9, small for her age, quiet in the way children become when adults are always tense. Is it Grandma's? She asked. My mother smiled too quickly. Something like that. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen with the cookbook open under the weak yellow light. Rain slid down the dark window. My reflection hovered over the pages. The recipes were handwritten. Not normal recipes. Not exactly. Each one had little instructions beneath the ingredients. Stir only after the house is silent. Do not taste before everyone is seated. The youngest must light the candle. No one leaves the table until the last bite. I should have laughed. Old family superstition. Rural drama. But then my phone buzzed. A Tinder notification. I had downloaded the app again 2 nights earlier, after too much wine and too much silence. His name was Rowan. His profile was simple. A dark coat, a bookshop window, a cup of coffee beside a rain-streaked pane. His message read, "You found the book." I stopped breathing. The refrigerator hummed. The rain grew louder. I typed, "What book?" 3 dots appeared, then vanished. Then, the one families hide when they want to forget what keeps them together. I stared at the message until my eyes burned. Then another came. Asterisk, don't tell Caleb yet. He breaks things when he's scared. Asterisk. I stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. Caleb had punched a pantry door when he was 17, the night Dad left. Nobody outside this family knew that. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. Maybe my brother had told someone. Maybe Rowan was local. Maybe I was overthinking. I told myself it made sense. The next morning, Rowan appeared at Bellwether Cafe. Not by accident. Marrow Creek was too small for accidents, but people still pretended. The cafe windows were fogged from the rain. Soft jazz played through old speakers. Neon from the pharmacy sign across the street trembled in my coffee. He sat across from me without asking. "You look like someone who hasn't slept," he said. His voice was gentle, measured. "You messaged me about my family," I said. "I messaged you about a book. How did you know?" He looked down, almost embarrassed. "My grandmother worked for your grandmother. I grew up hearing stories. That was plausible. Everything dangerous is plausible at first." "What kind of stories?" "That your family confuses loyalty with obedience." I should have left. Instead, I stayed. Because he said it the way I had always felt it. Because after months with a man who made me doubt my own mind, Rowan sounded like a door opening. He knew small things. That I hated nutmeg. That I always sat with my back to the wall. That my childhood nickname was Nell. Small town, he said when I asked. But I had not been Nell since I was 12. That evening, my mother insisted we cook from the book. Just one recipe, she said, smiling too brightly. For tradition. Caleb frowned. Mom, that thing was sealed inside a wall. And your grandmother was sentimental. She hid it. She preserved it. The first dish was a cranberry bread. Nothing sinister. Flour, butter, orange peel. But beneath the ingredients was a line written in darker ink. Before baking, each family member must say what they are willing to forgive. My mother read it aloud like a prayer. No one laughed. Sophie looked at me. Do I have to? My mother touched her hair. Only if you want the family to stay close. There it was. Soft pressure. Old pressure. The kind that sounds like love if you are trained young enough. We each said something. Caleb said he forgave Dad. My mother said she forgave time. I said I forgave myself, though I did not. Sophie whispered, I forgive everyone for being angry. The oven clicked. The house seemed to listen. After we ate, Caleb became strange. Not violent at first. Just sharp. He accused my mother of hiding money. My mother accused him of abandoning the family. Plates rattled. Chairs scraped. Sophie sat very still, hands in her lap. I watched the room tilt toward something familiar. Not supernatural. Family. The oldest ritual in the world. Make everyone hungry. Make everyone guilty. Then call the damage tradition. My phone buzzed under the table. Rowan. First recipe opens the mouth. I typed back. Are you doing this? His reply. I'm helping you see it. The second recipe was made the next day. My mother said it would calm everyone. A savory pie. Heavy with herbs. The instruction beneath it read, the youngest must place the first piece before the empty chair. What empty chair? I asked. My mother had already pulled one from the dining room corner. Dad's old chair. No one had sat in it for 15 years. Sophie carried the plate with both hands. Her face was pale. The house was full of sound. Rain against glass. Pipes clicking. The oven fan. My late-night phone buzzing again and again in my pocket. After dinner, my mother cried without tears. Caleb smashed a glass against the sink, then stared at his hand like it belonged to someone else. Sophie did not react. That scared me most. Children should flinch when adults break the air. She only watched the empty chair. Later, I found her in the hallway. Did Grandma make you do recipes? I asked softly. Sophie shook her head. Grandma is dead. I know. She looked at me then. Too calm. But Nana says families need someone small to hold them together. My stomach turned cold. I searched the house after midnight. Drawers. Boxes. My grandmother's old desk. Finally, behind a loose panel in the study, I found letters. Dozens. All addressed to my mother. All from someone named R. The handwriting was Rowan's. Or close enough. The letters described my family in clinical detail. Our arguments. Our grief. Our debts. My divorce. Caleb's drinking. Sophie's anxiety. There were printed screenshots too. My old Instagram. My dating profile. Emails I had sent to my lawyer. Voice transcripts from family group chats. Someone had been watching us before I ever came home. My phone buzzed. Rowan, now you're ready for the final recipe. I called the police. Not local. County. I had learned from my ex that control always has friends nearby. Then I called Caleb. He answered from upstairs, voice thick with sleep. What is it? Get Sophie. Leave the house. Why? Because this isn't Grandma's book. Silence. Then a floorboard creaked above me. Not Caleb's room. My mother's. I heard her voice through the ceiling. Soft. Coaxing. Sophie, sweetheart. Come help Nana. I ran. The hallway stretched long and dark. Rain hammered the windows. The old house groaned as if waking. Sophie stood in the kitchen in her pink socks. My mother was beside her. The cookbook lay open on the counter. A candle burned. The final page had no ingredients. Only one instruction. The youngest must choose what the family cannot lose. Beside the book sat a small voice recorder, a phone, and a stack of documents. Custody papers, insurance forms, legal forms assigning guardianship. Not a sacrifice of blood, a sacrifice of identity. Sophie's name, her inheritance, her future. A child made into the lock that kept adults together. My mother looked at me with wet eyes. "You don't understand," she said. "Your grandmother saved this family with rules." "No," I said. She hid the proof. The back door opened. Rowan stepped in from the rain. Dark coat, calm face. He looked exactly as he had in the cafe. Comforting, safe, a lie shaped like a person. "My real name is Elias Reed," he said. "Your grandmother was supposed to finish the work. She lost courage." Caleb appeared behind me, holding Sophie's coat. "What work?" Elias smiled faintly. "Family correction." The words were so clean they felt sterile. He explained it like a therapist might. The cookbook had never been a cookbook. It was a behavioral script. Meals, rituals, sleep disruption, emotional pressure, inheritance control, shame conditioning. Recipes designed to destabilize people, then offer order. My grandmother had been part of a private group that believed broken families could be preserved through obedience. Elias had revived it through fake profiles, burner phones, hacked accounts, voice notes, AI-generated messages from dead relatives. Small-town gossip turned into surveillance. He had not cursed the food. He had poisoned the room with suggestion. And my mother, lonely and terrified of losing US, had let him. Sirens approached in the distance. Elias heard them. His eyes moved to me. "You always call outsiders when family becomes difficult. That's called survival." His expression hardened. Only for a second. Then the mask returned. "Sophie," he said gently, looking past me, "do you want your family to stay together?" Sophie looked at the candle, then at my mother, then at me. "No," she said. A small word. A clean one. "I want everyone to stop scaring me." The police lights washed the kitchen red and blue. Elias did not run. People like him rarely do. They believe explanation is escape. They found more books in his rented office. Not cookbooks exactly. Scripts. Family trees. Psychological profiles. Recordings. Folders named after households. He had done this before. Always near holidays. Always when people were tired, lonely, guilty, desperate to belong. He entered families through tradition. Through grief. Through the sentence everyone fears most. If you leave, everything falls apart. My mother was not arrested that night. Not immediately. She sat at the kitchen table while officers moved around her, staring at the dead candle like it had betrayed her. Sophie left with Caleb. I stayed long enough to close the cookbook. The cover felt damp under my hand. Ordinary. That was the worst part. No monster. No demon. Only paper, ink, hunger, and people willing to call control love. Thanksgiving never happened. Not that year. Caleb and Sophie moved 2 towns over. I stayed with them for a while, sleeping on the couch beneath the low hum of a clean refrigerator. At night, rain tapped the windows. My phone buzzed sometimes from unknown numbers. I never answered. Months later, Sophie asked if families had to stay together forever. I told her no. Families should keep you safe. Not trapped. She thought about that for a long time. Then she said, "Good. I still cook sometimes. Simple things. Soup, toast, coffee in the morning. But I do not trust recipes that demand silence. I do not trust traditions that require a child to carry adult fear. And I no longer believe being kept is the same as being loved. Trust should not taste like obligation. Privacy should not be treated as betrayal. A boundary is not a broken family. Sometimes it is the only thing that saves one. Because the most dangerous rituals are not the ones written in old books. They are the ones repeated at dinner tables, year after year, until everyone forgets they were allowed to leave. Story 2. Thanksgiving came in rain. Not soft rain. City rain. Cold, metallic, endless. It ran down the brownstone windows and turned the streetlights into yellow bruises. Neon from the bodega flickered across puddles. Cars hissed past the curb. Somewhere in the building, a radiator knocked like a fist against old pipes. I stood in my mother's kitchen holding a bowl of cranberry sauce and trying not to cry. My divorce had been final for 11 days. 11 days since my apartment became too quiet. 11 days since I stopped wearing my ring, but still felt it around my finger, invisible and tight. Everyone kept saying I looked good. That was how families lied kindly. My mother stirred gravy at the stove. My brother Caleb carved the turkey with headphones around his neck. My Aunt Lydia arranged candles as if symmetry could keep grief away. Soft jazz played from a speaker on the windowsill, low enough to be polite, loud enough to hide silence. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Tell them I'm sorry I'm late." I stared at it. "Everything okay?" Caleb asked. "Wrong number," I said. The front doorbell rang. Everyone paused. Rain tapped the windows. My mother wiped her hands on a towel. "That must be Thomas." The name moved through the room strangely. Thomas Vale. A cousin, apparently. Distant. My grandmother's side. Someone found through an ancestry website after my mother spent the year digging through family records like the past might return something useful. He had RSVP'd 2 weeks earlier. No one had met him. His email had been warm. Polished. Almost too intimate. "I've heard so much about all of you. Especially Nora." That was me. I had asked my mother what he meant. She said, "Maybe your grandmother mentioned you in old letters." I wanted to believe it. Maybe I was overthinking. I told myself it made sense. My mother opened the door. No one stood there. Only rain, fog, and the hallway light reflecting off wet tile. On the welcome mat sat a small envelope. No stamp. No name. Inside was a photograph. Old Thanksgiving. Maybe 20 years ago. My father still alive. My mother younger. Caleb missing his front tooth. Me in a red sweater, holding a spoon like a microphone. In the background, near the hallway mirror, stood a man none of us recognized. Tall. Dark suit. Hands folded. Watching us. Caleb leaned over my shoulder. "Who is that?" My mother's face lost color. "I don't know." Aunt Lydia took the photo, squinting. "Maybe one of your father's friends." "He hated guests," I said. No one laughed. The phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. "I was there. You just didn't look." I should have called the police then. Instead, I put the phone face down. It was Thanksgiving. Families are skilled at swallowing fear with food. Dinner began at 6. The house smelled of butter, rosemary, wine, and rain-soaked coats drying near the radiator. Forks clicked against plates. The jazz changed to piano. Caleb told a careful story from work. My mother smiled too brightly. Aunt Lydia drank too quickly. An empty chair sat at the end of the table. Thomas's place. My mother had said it with the good silver. "We should eat," she said. "We are eating," Caleb replied. "I mean without waiting." The empty chair seemed to listen. Halfway through dinner, my niece Emma pointed at the dining room mirror. "Who's that man?" Every adult turned. At first I saw only candles, glassware, wet windows, our faces doubled in reflection. Then the mirror shifted. Not physically. My eyes adjusted to something behind us. A man stood in the doorway. Tall. Dark suit. The same man from the photograph. In the mirror only. I turned around. The doorway was empty. The radiator hissed. Emma whispered. He moved. My mother dropped her fork. Caleb stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Okay," he said. "That's not funny." No one answered. The mirror showed only us again. Aunt Lydia crossed herself. I hated that gesture. Hated how quickly fear becomes old language. My phone buzzed. Nora saw me first. She always notices what others miss. I hadn't told anyone about the messages. That was my mistake. Fear isolates before anyone else has to. After dinner, my mother asked me to help with dishes. The kitchen window had fogged from steam. My reflection looked pale and older than I felt. The dishwasher hummed. Rain ticked against the glass. Somewhere upstairs, Floorboards creaked under no one's visible weight. My mother kept washing the same plate. "Mom." She didn't look at me. "Who is Thomas?" She swallowed. "A relative." That's not an answer. Her hands trembled in the sink. "When your grandmother died, there were letters." A name kept appearing. "Thomas." She wrote as if he had been wronged. Wronged how? I don't know. But she did. Or she knew enough. Before I could press, my phone buzzed again. This time it was an audio file. No number. No subject. Just a voice note. I played it before thinking. A man's voice filled the kitchen. Soft. Cultured. Almost sad. "Nora, you used to hide under the dining table when adults argued. You counted chair legs to stay calm. 4, 8, 12, 16. I stopped breathing. I had done that as a child. No one knew. Not even Caleb. My mother stared at me. The voice continued. You still count things when you're afraid. I shut it off. The kitchen seemed to shrink. Rain. Humming dishwasher. My mother's breathing. I whispered, how could he know that? She shook her head. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. An old home video. A family story. Something posted online without my memory. I told myself it made sense, but my hands would not stop shaking. The next hour became a spiral. Aunt Lydia found Thomas in a framed photo on the mantel. Same dark suit. Standing behind my father at a picnic, face blurred slightly, as if caught mid-turn. Caleb opened his phone and found a new contact saved under Thomas V. No number. Only a profile picture of our dining room table. Taken that night. From the empty chair. Emma began crying in the bathroom because the mirror showed a man standing behind her, touching her shoulder. When we checked, her shoulder was dry, but her sweater smelled faintly of old cologne. Then Thomas began calling. Not my phone. The landline. A phone my mother kept for emergencies and old habits. It rang from the hallway table, shrill and wrong. Caleb answered on speaker. Who is this? Static. Then the same soft male voice. I'm not here to frighten you, Aunt Lydia whispered. Then why are you doing this? Because families forget what they bury. My mother sat down slowly. Caleb looked at her. Mom. The voice continued, calm, invasive. Ask Elaine about the summer house. Ask her about the boy in the attic. Ask her why her mother removed every mirror from the upstairs bedrooms. My mother began to cry. Quietly. No drama. Just collapse. I took the phone. Leave us alone. Thomas laughed softly. Nora. Boundaries. You learned that word in therapy and mistook it for safety. My skin went cold. My therapy wasn't public. My divorce wasn't public. My pain was not supposed to be available. The line went dead. That was when I called the police. The first officers arrived looking annoyed at the weather. Then they saw the photographs, the messages, the voice notes, the landline logs. One officer checked the house while another asked questions in the living room. Rain flashed red and blew through the curtains from the patrol car outside. The jazz had stopped, but I could still hear a thin melody through the walls. Not music. A phone playing somewhere. Caleb found it behind the dining room mirror. A small device. Camera. Speaker. Battery pack. Hidden in the frame. The house went silent. Not haunted silent. Human silent. Worse. The police found 3 more devices. One in the hallway vent. One behind the mantel photo. One taped beneath the dining table. The mirrors had not shown ghosts. They had shown projections from tiny angled displays and reflective film placed days earlier. The photographs had been altered. The voice had been cloned. The cologne on Emma's sweater came from a soaked thread tied behind the bathroom mirror. Technology made the impossible intimate. But the question remained. Who had placed it all? The answer came through my mother's laptop. A detective named Harris opened the email chain with Thomas. The address traced through privacy services, burner accounts, fake identities. But one attachment carried metadata. A name. Julian Cross. A genealogist. The man who had contacted my mother months earlier offering to help restore family history. He had visited the house twice. once to scan old photographs, once to interview my mother. He had walked through every room. He had asked about childhood memories, family shame, dead relatives, old nicknames. He had recorded voices, mapped pain, built a ghost from fragments. My mother covered her mouth. "I told him everything," she whispered. Detective Harris said Julian had done this before. Different names, different families, inheritance disputes, old scandals, estranged relatives, lonely widows, people grieving enough to mistake attention for care. He didn't steal jewelry. He stole access. Then he created hauntings tailored to each family. Sometimes for money, sometimes for control. Sometimes, Harris said, because he liked watching families accuse their own memories. The climax came just after midnight. Police were still in the house when the front door opened. Not forced, unlocked. Julian Cross stepped inside wearing a dark suit, rain shining on his shoulders. For 1 second, he looked exactly like the man from the photographs. Then he smiled. Small. Apologetic. "My invitation said 7, he said. Caleb lunged, but an officer stopped him. Julian raised his hands calmly. "I was invited." "You terrorized children," I said. His eyes moved to me. "Nora, you of all people should understand. Silence is not peace. It's just control with better manners." His voice was gentle. That made me hate him more. He looked at my mother. Elaine wanted truth. "I wanted family," she whispered. "They're often the same wound." Detective Harris stepped forward. "Julian Cross, you're under arrest." Julian's smile faded only slightly. As they cuffed him, my phone buzzed one last time. A scheduled message. Someone always becomes the guest eventually. I looked up. Caleb stood by the dining room mirror. Still. Too still. For a moment, his reflection did not match his face. His mouth curved faintly while he did not smile. Then I saw the phone in his hand. Julian's second phone. Caleb had picked it up from the floor without realizing. On the screen was a live feed of our dining room, filters still running, images still warping, voices still cued. He looked at me, pale and shaken. "I heard Dad," he whispered. The device had played our father's voice through a hidden earpiece Julian dropped near the table. For 10 minutes, Caleb had listened, believed, obeyed. Not possession. Worse. Persuasion. The police took the phone from him. He cried then, not because he was weak, because something had reached inside him, wearing love's face. Months have passed. My mother sold the house. Caleb stopped answering unknown numbers. Emma refuses mirrors in her bedroom. I changed every password, deleted old accounts, locked down family photos, and learned how much of a life can be harvested from nostalgia. Thanksgiving is different now. Smaller. Quieter. No empty chairs. Sometimes rain still brings it back. The neon in wet windows. The hum of appliances. The soft buzz of a phone after midnight. The terrible feeling that someone has studied you so closely they can enter the room before they arrive. I used to think privacy was about secrets. It isn't. Privacy is the right to remain unassembled by strangers. Trust is not someone knowing your pain. Pain can be researched. Voices can be copied. Memories can be edited until they confess to things that never happened. A boundary is not suspicion. It is the last honest door between yourself and the people who believe love means access. That Thanksgiving, the guest never arrived. And still somehow he got inside. Story 3. Rain streaked the streets, pooling in puddles that reflected neon signs and streetlights in fractured colors. I walked slowly, coat collar turned up, letting the chill seep into my bones. The city felt hollow. Cafes were bright, warm, but I never stopped inside. I hadn't felt like myself since the breakup, since leaving the apartment that held too many memories of someone who no longer existed. Silence had become a constant companion. Thanksgiving was supposed to help, a family reunion to tether me back to the world. I had returned to my parents' house reluctantly, suitcase still in the trunk of my car. The house smelled of roast, candle wax, and old pine, comfortable in a way I almost resented. The turkey lay at the center of the table, golden plump, steaming. My mother smiled, oblivious. My father hummed to himself, slicing bread. Cousins laughed softly in the corner, the sound echoing oddly in the spacious dining room. I sat quietly, hands folded. Then I heard it, a whisper, so faint I thought I imagined it. He thinks he's the good one. But he lied, always lied. I froze. My heart thudded. The whisper came again, clearer this time. Look at her. The secret she keeps. The thing she did last summer. The turkey. It was impossible. My mind searched for rational explanations. Wind. Floorboards creaking? I told myself it made sense. Maybe I was overthinking. I tried to dismiss it, but the whispers continued. Names. Secrets. Small betrayals no one else knew. My brother's hidden debts. My cousin's affair. Even my own sins, petty and shameful, spoken aloud in words I hadn't uttered. I looked at Mara. She had arrived that morning, ostensibly a new friend my mother had invited. Her smile was calm, soothing, her gaze attentive in a way that felt almost invasive. She knew which coffee I ordered from the corner cafe, the song I hummed while walking home, my old childhood nickname. I rationalized. Maybe she paid attention. Maybe I overshared. The turkey's whispers grew louder. And you think you can escape, but everyone who listens must pay. I shivered, the chill from the rainy evening seeping in through the windows. Neon lights reflected off the wet streets outside, fractured across the walls like shards of glass. The family laughed unaware, or pretending to. Mara leaned close, her voice low, intimate. It isn't the turkey. Not really. It's feeding on fear, on attention, on secrets. It learns fast. I wanted to believe her. I clung to her words, the warmth in her hand on mine. Rationalized her insight. I told myself it made sense. Maybe I was imagining the rest. The whispers shifted, naming events that hadn't happened yet. A fight, an accident, a betrayal. I realized with a cold, sinking dread that the turkey was predicting and orchestrating. Every revelation, every truth, every sin spoken aloud had a consequence. I tried to leave the table. Footsteps echoed behind me, the soft hum of the refrigerator. Appliances whirring, doors clicking, a phone buzzing with a message I hadn't received. Every sound became amplified, unnerving, purposeful. The house itself felt alive, complicit. The whispers intensified. Someone must take the blame. Someone must listen. Someone must fall. I stared at Mara. Calm, attentive, comforting, but too knowing. She smiled faintly, her eyes scanning the table, the room, the flickering candlelight. She knows everything. Impossible details emerged. The times I walked past the park, the book I carried in my coat pocket, the exact date of my first heartbreak, details I had told no one. Panic gripped me. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. I wanted to believe she was safe. I told myself it made sense. The turkey began moving subtly, shifting its head toward each person in turn. The whispers crescendoed. My father's hidden debts, my mother's old betrayals, my brother's secret shame. They all spilled into the room in faint, hissing voices, soft but unmistakable. Each confession felt like chains tightening around me. I fled to the hallway, heart hammering. Footsteps echoed behind me. Floorboards creaked. Rain tapped against the window pane. The humming of the kitchen appliances matched my heartbeat. And then I heard it again, unmistakable. Only one can escape. Only one can survive. Mara followed silently, calm and composed, yet I sensed the intent behind her movements. Observant, patient, invasive. I rationalized, she's trying to help. She knows how to survive this. The climax came when I realized the truth. The turkey wasn't cursed. It was a vessel, a focus, a tool for someone or something, observing, cataloging, manipulating. Every whisper, every revelation, every secret had been orchestrated. I traced burner phones, metadata, AI-generated emails. The pattern became clear: long-term obsession, digital surveillance, careful manipulation. The authorities arrived hours later, the house quiet, evidence in hand. Logs, recordings, accounts traced. Mara vanished, leaving only digital shadows and fragmented traces of her attention, her manipulation, her presence. I survived. The table has been cleared, the turkey discarded, but the memory remains vivid. Rain tapping neon streets outside, shadows stretching too long, reflections lagging behind movement. Every hum of a refrigerator, creak of a floorboard, or distant siren reminds me of observation, of control, of unseen attention cataloging my life. Trust is fragile. Privacy is illusion. Memory can be weaponized. Boundaries blur. I walk the streets carefully now, every puddle reflecting not just my face but possibility. I survived, but I am not the same. And sometimes late at night, I whisper to myself, who watches while you think you are alone? Who uses your own secrets against you? And what price do we pay for listening to the wrong voice? I don't know, and I fear I may never know. Story 4. The rain started before sunset. Thin, silver rain. City rain. The kind that turned every traffic light into a wound on the pavement and made the windows of my apartment look like dark mirrors. I had moved back into my grandmother's house 3 weeks after the divorce. Not because I wanted to, because I had nowhere else quiet enough to fall apart. The house sat at the end of Hawthorne Street, pressed between brick apartment buildings and a closed pharmacy with a flickering neon cross. At night, red and green light moved across the kitchen tiles like something breathing. Thanksgiving was supposed to be simple. My sister Mara came with her husband and their little boy. My mother arrived with flowers she did not put in water. Everyone spoke softly around me, like grief was a sleeping animal. "You look better," Mara said. I smiled. People say that when they mean, "You look less broken." By midnight, the kitchen was full. Turkey cooling under foil. Sweet potatoes, green beans, cranberry sauce in my grandmother's blue glass bowl. 3 pies on the counter. The appliances hummed. Rain tapped the windows. Somewhere upstairs, old pipes clicked in the walls. I went to bed feeling almost human. In the morning, every dish was gone. Not eaten. Gone. The pans were clean. The counters wiped. The refrigerator empty. Only the blue glass bowl remained, sitting in the sink, dry and spotless. Mara laughed first because she was scared. Did someone prank us? My mother stared at the empty oven. No one came in. The locks were still bolted. The security camera at the front door showed nothing but rain and a stray cat moving through headlights. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voice note. I played it. Static. Soft jazz in the background. Then a man's voice, calm and close. "You always leave the cranberry sauce uncovered." My stomach tightened. Mara looked at me. "Who is that?" I didn't know. I wanted to believe it was my ex. Some cruel little performance. He used to know how to enter a room without opening a door. Emotionally, I mean. Then another message came. A photo. Our kitchen. Taken from inside the house. The timestamp was 3:17 a.m. In the corner of the image, reflected in the dark window above the sink, stood a figure holding a phone. The police came after noon. They checked the doors, windows, basement. Nothing. One officer said, "Old houses make people nervous." I hated him for saying it. That night, I matched with Daniel on a dating app. I know how that sounds, but loneliness is not logical. It is weather. It gets into your clothes. Daniel's profile was clean. A cafe photo. Kind eyes. No shirtless mirror pictures. He said he liked old jazz, rainy streets, and people who still believed in handwritten recipes. His first message was simple. Thanksgiving can make a house feel haunted, even when it isn't. I stared at it for a long time. Maybe I was overthinking. I told myself it made sense. My profile mentioned the divorce. It mentioned moving home. It mentioned cooking. We met 2 nights later at a cafe under the train tracks. Rain dragged neon across the windows. A saxophone played through ceiling speakers. Daniel listened like listening was a skill he had studied. "You seem like someone who apologizes before asking for space," he said. I looked down. My ex used to say the same thing. Daniel smiled sadly. "Sorry. Too personal." "No," I said. "It's accurate." That was the first hook. Accuracy. Not charm. Not beauty. Being seen. For a week, He became part of my evenings. Messages, voice notes, gentle questions. He remembered small things. Chamomile tea, the blue bowl, the way I hated overhead lights. Then he said my childhood nickname, Ellie. Nobody called me that anymore. I asked how he knew. He paused. You mentioned it. I hadn't. I wanted to believe it. Maybe I had. Grief edits memory. The next clue came from the thermostat app. At 2:11 a.m., someone lowered the kitchen temperature to 50 degrees. At 2:14, my phone buzzed. Daniel, cold rooms preserve things. I sat up in bed. The hallway outside my door was black. The refrigerator hummed downstairs. Floorboards creaked once. Then again. I called Mara. She answered groggy and irritated until I told her. Get out, she said. But leaving the house felt strange. Not unsafe. Wrong. Like stepping out would confirm something I was not ready to know. The next morning, Mara came over with her husband. We searched the basement properly. Behind shelves of paint cans, we found a seam in the wall. A panel, old wood painted to look like brick. Behind it was a narrow stairway descending into darkness. The air smelled of flour, grease, damp stone, and something metallic. Mara whispered, call the police. But I was already walking down. Some decisions are not brave. They are automatic. The tunnel ran beneath the house, under Hawthorne Street. Wires lined the ceiling. Cameras, motion sensors, old speakers hidden behind mesh, extension cords taped to pipes. Not ancient, modern, human. At the end was a steel door, unlocked. Inside was a kitchen, industrial ovens, stainless tables, freezers, shelves stacked with canned goods, flour, oil, spices. A speaker in the corner played soft jazz. And there were people, 6 of them, old, pale, silent. My Uncle Peter, who disappeared when I was 9. My grandmother's sister, Ruth, who everyone said had moved to Florida. A cousin I recognized only from framed photos. They looked at me with a terror so practiced it had become manners. A woman in a white apron whispered, You came back. Mara began crying. What is this? Uncle Peter looked at the ceiling camera. Don't speak loudly. Then the speaker crackled. Daniel's voice filled the room. Elena, I was wondering when you'd find it. My skin went cold. Not because of the tunnel. Because he said my full name the way my ex used to say it before correcting me. The police later called him Adrian Voss. Not Daniel. He had no fixed address. 4 fake profiles. 3 burner phones. A storage unit full of family records, therapy notes, divorce filings, old social media backups, email leaks, and printed screenshots of my life. He had been watching the house for years. Not just me. All of us. The entity was not a demon. It was a system. A private online forum. Men with money. Obsession as entertainment. Families as projects. They called houses like ours inheritance cages. My great-grandfather had built the tunnel during Prohibition. Decades later, someone found it. Then someone monetized it. Then someone inherited the secret and turned it into ritual. Every Thanksgiving, food vanished. Every generation, one relative discovered the truth. And if they left the house afterward, they were followed, isolated, discredited, and eventually taken. Not magic. Logistics. Fear. Paperwork. Digital ghosts. Adrian had used AI voice cloning to mimic relatives. Fake emails to create family arguments. Metadata from photos to map routines. Tracking tags hidden in gifts. Burner phones under floorboards. Cameras inside smoke detectors. He had not trapped my family with chains. He trapped them with proof that nobody would believe them. The confrontation happened in the kitchen upstairs. Police lights painted the windows blue and red. Rain kept tapping. The house smelled like dust and old sugar. Adrian stood by the sink when I came in. He looked smaller than I expected. Calm. Tired. Almost kind. You needed someone to understand you, he said. I held my phone in my pocket. Recording. You studied me. That's one form of care. No, I said. That's theft. He smiled faintly. People give themselves away all day. Posts, photos, receipts, voice notes, location tags, sad songs at 2 a.m. I only paid attention. Outside, footsteps hit the porch. He looked toward the door. "You'll miss it," he said. Being known. The police entered before he could move. No shouting, no dramatic confession. Just handcuffs, a wet coat, a man looking disappointed that reality had interrupted his story. Months passed. The tunnel was sealed with concrete. The missing relatives gave statements. Some adjusted to daylight. Some never really returned. The house was sold. I moved into a small apartment above a closed bookstore where the radiator hissed at night and the windows reflected only me. Sometimes my phone buzzes and I still freeze. Sometimes soft jazz in a cafe makes me leave before ordering. I do not use dating apps anymore. Not because I think everyone is dangerous. Because I finally understand that intimacy without boundaries is not intimacy. It is entry. People say privacy is dead. They say it casually like weather. But privacy does not die all at once. It disappears like Thanksgiving dinner. Plate by plate. Habit by habit. Nickname by nickname. Until one morning you wake up hungry, surrounded by clean counters, wondering who has been feeding on your life while you slept. Story 5. The invitation arrived on a rainy Tuesday, 3 weeks after the divorce became final. Not by mail, by hand. A cream envelope slid beneath my apartment door at 11:42 p.m., while I sat alone in the dark listening to the refrigerator hum and rain tap the windows like fingernails. My apartment still smelled of cardboard boxes and old grief. Half-unpacked books, one chair, 2 plates, a bed too large for one body. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me. A dating app notification. "Elise, did you get it?" I stared at the message. Elise was new, soft-spoken, patient. A woman from the app who liked old films, rainy streets, and people who survived quietly. We had matched 4 days earlier. She never pushed, never flirted too hard. She asked questions that made loneliness feel less humiliating. I opened the envelope. Inside was a black card. A private Thanksgiving dinner. 8 p.m. The Whitlock house. For those who have nowhere else to go. No signature. Only my name written by hand. Nathan. My full name. Not Nate, like on the app. My phone buzzed again. "Elise, I'll be there too. You shouldn't spend Thanksgiving alone." That was the first red flag. I folded it into a shape called kindness. I wanted to believe it. Thanksgiving arrived wrapped in fog. Cold city streets shone beneath neon signs. Rainwater gathered along curbs, reflecting red brake lights and pharmacy blue windows. I took a cab across town, past cafes glowing amber, past couples under umbrellas, past families carrying pies in plastic bags. The Whitlock house stood at the edge of the old district, where the buildings grew larger and less friendly. A brownstone mansion with black iron fencing and tall windows reflecting nothing but rain. Elise opened the door before I knocked. She wore a dark green dress. Her hair was pinned back. She looked warmer than the house. "Nathan," she said softly. "You came. You sound surprised." "No," she smiled. Relieved. Inside, the air smelled of roasted herbs, candle wax, wet coats, and something metallic beneath the sweetness. Soft jazz played from another room. The floorboards creaked under my shoes. "You okay?" she asked. "Just tired. You didn't sleep last night." I looked at her. She lowered her eyes, apologetic. "You mentioned insomnia." Maybe I had. I told myself it made sense. The dining room was already full. 7 guests sat around a long table lit by candles. Silverware gleamed. Wine glasses trembled with reflected flame. Rain moved across the windows like slow static. They all turned when I entered. No one stood. Elise touched my elbow. "Everyone, this is Nathan." A woman with silver hair smiled first. "We know." The others smiled after her. Not together. One by one. Like a sequence. I sat beside Elise, across from a man in a navy suit with polished hands and pale eyes. He introduced himself as Julian. "You're newly divorced," he said. Not a question. I forced a laugh. That obvious? To people who notice absence. The woman beside him nodded. You still were the shape of the ring. I pulled my hand under the table. Elise leaned closer. They're direct here. But safe. Safe. That word had become a drug. I dronk water. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but there was no signal. The room seemed too quiet beneath the jazz. No traffic. No neighbors. Just rain, breathing, silverware, and the distant hum of appliances behind the kitchen wall. Dinner began slowly. Turkey. Potatoes. Cranberries dark as clotted wine. Everyone spoke calmly, almost beautifully. They asked about my childhood, my work, my divorce. Too precise. Your ex-wife was named Claire, Julian said. I set my fork down. Elise glanced at him. Julian. He smiled. Forgive me. I study people professionally. What profession is that? Memory, he said. The table chuckled softly. I didn't. The silver-haired woman, Margaret, reached for wine. We all arrived here broken, Nathan. That's why the invitation finds us. How did it find me? Elise touched my wrist. A small pressure. Through me. There it was. The explanation I wanted. A dating app match. A lonely holiday. A dinner for strangers. Odd but possible. Maybe I was overthinking. Then Julian said my childhood nickname. Mouse. My body went cold. Only my mother called me that. Before she died. Before my father remarried and packed her things into boxes like grief could be archived. What did you say? Julian tilted his head. Did I mispronounce it? The jazz kept playing. Rain tapped the glass. Elise whispered. Nathan breathed. How do you know that name? Margaret smiled sadly. We know what people bring to the table. I stood. My chair scraped the floor. That was when I noticed the photographs. Framed portraits lined the dining room wall. Old faces. Formal clothes. Dates beneath them. I stepped closer. My chest tightened. Margaret Hale. 1948 to 2021. Julian Cross. 1977 to 2019. Vera Quinn. 1962 to 2020. Each person at the table had a portrait on the wall. Each portrait had a death date. I turned back slowly. They watched me with candlelit patience. You're all dead, I said. No one denied it. Elise looked almost tender. Not in the way you think. My phone buzzed again, though it had no signal. A voice note appeared from an unknown number. I played it before fear could stop me. My mother's voice filled the room. Nathan, don't be rude. Sit down for dinner. It was not her. It was too smooth. Too clean. A dead woman assembled from old home videos and stolen voicemail. The table listened respectfully. Julian said, Voice is the last door people leave unlocked. I backed toward the doorway. The door behind me clicked. Locked. Elise rose slowly. Nathan, no one wants to hurt you. That's what people say when they've already started. Her face changed then. Not dramatically. Just enough. The warmth cooled into observation. You're more perceptive than the profile suggested. My profile? Your pattern, Julian corrected. Divorced. Isolated. Grief history. Low holiday support. High responsiveness to emotionally literate language. I looked at Elise. She didn't flinch. You're not Elise. No. What is your name? She smiled faintly. The one you trusted most. The room seemed to tilt. The dead guests sat perfectly still. Then I understood. They weren't dead. Not literally resurrected. They were identities. Stolen from obituaries. Missing persons archives. Old social media. Family videos. AI voices. Actors maybe. Devotees. Participants in some private theater of control. A resurrection built from data. A ritual for the modern world. Julian opened a leather folder beside his plate. Inside were pages of me. Screenshots. Emails. Dating app chats. Therapy appointment reminders. Photos from social media accounts I had forgotten existed. A floor plan of my apartment. Notes in neat columns. Trust triggers. Gentle correction, maternal voice, intellectual women, shared loneliness. Fear response, freezes before fleeing. Primary wound, abandonment. Entry point, Thanksgiving isolation. I felt stripped, not naked. Worse, known without consent. What do you want? Margaret folded her hands. Continuation. Julian said, every year someone joins the table. Elise stepped closer. You have a clean identity. Good credit. No close dependents. Minimal social obligations this week. My throat tightened. A replacement. A host, Julian said. A living signature. The words landed slowly. They didn't need my body. They needed my face, my voice, my accounts, my biometrics, my consent captured under pressure, my disappearance made plausible by divorce and depression. They would make Nathan leave. Then they would keep using him. The final ingredient. Me. A burner phone appeared in Elise's hand. She played an audio clip. My own voice said, I need space. I'm leaving town for a while. I had never recorded it. She watched my reaction. Good, isn't it? But not perfect. We need fresh samples. Emotional range. A few phrases. Then you can rest. I ran. Not toward the door. Toward the kitchen. The dining room exploded into movement, but not panic. Chairs slid. Footsteps followed. Calm voices called my name. Nathan, don't make this frightening. You came because you wanted to be chosen. The kitchen was stainless steel and candlelit. No cooks. No staff. Just humming refrigerators and covered trays. I grabbed a carving fork and slammed it into the small window above the sink. Glass cracked but didn't break. Elise entered behind me. She held her hands open. You don't have to be alone anymore. You don't know anything about alone. I know you slept on the floor after Claire left because the bed felt accusatory. I stopped. She took one step closer. I know you replayed your mother's last voicemail until the file corrupted. I know you still keep it backed up in 3 places. I know you hate yourself for wanting someone to tell you what to do. My hand shook around the fork. She spoke softly, accurately, cruelly. That is not love, I said. No, she replied. It's access. Then a noise cut through the room. Sirens. Distant at first, then closer. Red and blue light flickered against the rain-dark windows. Elise's face tightened. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a real signal. A message from Claire. Police are outside. Keep moving. My ex-wife. The one person I had not trusted enough to tell. But I had accidentally sent her my location when I shared the invitation days earlier, joking that if I get murdered at rich people Thanksgiving, this is where. She hadn't laughed. She had called when I didn't reply. Then she had called the police. The front door crashed open. Shouting. Footsteps. Radios crackling. The dining room guests scattered, but not far. The house had been wired, watched, staged. Police moved through it like light through a wound. Julian tried to remain dignified as they cuffed him. Margaret cried without tears. Elise stood still. When an officer pulled her hands behind her back, she looked at me with something almost like disappointment. You would have been beautifully remembered, she said. I didn't answer. Later, Detective Morrow explained it under fluorescent lights at the station. They were not a cult in the old sense. No ancient ritual. No supernatural hunger. They called themselves the Table. A criminal network built around identity replacement, inheritance fraud, coercive control, and psychological captivity. They targeted isolated people, staged intimate gatherings, extracted voice and biometric data, took over accounts, and erased victims socially before anyone knew they were gone. Some victims escaped. Some didn't. The dead guests were roles. Masks built from real dead people. The resurrection was performance. The ritual was paperwork, passwords, fear, and time. Elise's real name was Mara Bell, former grief counselor, former data broker analyst. Multiple aliases, multiple victims. She learned how people want to be comforted, Detective Morrow said. Then she weaponized it. I thought of her hand on my wrist, her soft voice, the way she made danger feel like being understood. Months passed. Thanksgiving became a smell I couldn't bear. Rosemary, candle wax, wine. I moved apartments, changed numbers, closed accounts, deleted old backups, learned how much of a person remains online after they think they have disappeared. Claire and I speak sometimes now, not as husband and wife, as witnesses. There is a tenderness in being believed after terror, a careful one, no promises. Some nights, rain taps my window and the refrigerator hums in the dark, and I remember that long table. The portraits, the dead names, the empty chair waiting for mine. I used to think trust meant being seen. Now I know being seen is not always mercy. Sometimes it is surveillance wearing candlelight. Privacy is not loneliness. Boundaries are not rejection. A person is more than their grief, their patterns, their passwords, their voice. And love, if it is love, does not need to know everything before it knocks. The most dangerous invitation is not the one that threatens you. It is the one that understands exactly where you are hungry and sets a place for you there. Story 6. After Daniel left, silence became a room I lived inside. Not peace, not quiet, silence. It sat beside me at breakfast. It watched me brush my teeth. It followed me through the city at night, reflected in black cafe windows and puddles bright with neon. It waited in my apartment while the refrigerator hummed and the pipes clicked inside the walls like someone thinking. I had moved 3 states away after the divorce. New city, new job, new phone number, new locks, same body, same panic when footsteps slowed outside my door. Daniel had never hit me. People always seemed relieved when I said that, as if cruelty needed bruises to become real. He had only corrected me, shrunk me, studied my face until I forgot what my own expressions meant. So when I met Miles, I mistook gentleness for safety. We matched on a dating app in late October. His profile was simple. No shirtless mirror photos, no forced cleverness. Just one picture of him in a gray coat outside a bookstore, rain shining on the pavement behind him. His first message said, "You look like someone who notices exits." I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was true. We met at a narrow cafe under a blue neon sign that flickered whenever buses passed. Rain tapped the front glass. Soft jazz played from a speaker near the espresso machine. The whole place smelled like wet wool, burnt coffee, and cinnamon. Miles arrived 5 minutes early. He stood when he saw me. Not too fast, not too eager. "You're Evelyn," he said. "Evie," I corrected. He smiled like he already knew. "Evie." That should have been the first thing. I had not written Evie on my profile, but I wanted to believe it. Maybe someone at work had called me that in a tagged photo. Maybe I had used it somewhere years ago. Maybe I was overthinking. He listened in a way that felt expensive. Careful. Rare. When I talked, he didn't interrupt. When I stopped, he didn't rush to fill the space. He let silence stand between us without making it hostile. Daniel had weaponized silence. Miles made it feel like shelter. "You're rebuilding," he said that night, watching rain move down the window in crooked silver lines. I looked at him over my coffee. "That obvious?" "No," he said. "Just familiar." His eyes were calm, pale brown, observant, too observant. By November, he knew my coffee order, my lunch break, the route I took home when I wanted to avoid the construction on Marlowe Street. He sent me a voice note one night while I was standing in my kitchen, barefoot, listening to the dishwasher hum. His voice came through low and warm. "Don't forget to eat something real tonight." I looked down at the crackers in my hand. The apartment suddenly felt awake. I told myself it made sense. Maybe I had complained about skipping dinner. Maybe he was just attentive. Maybe I was still trained to fear care. Then he sent another message. "And stop sleeping with the hallway light on. It makes shadows worse." I didn't answer. Outside my window, the city blurred under fog and rain. A siren rose somewhere far away, then faded. The hallway light glowed under my bedroom door. I turned it off, then turned it back on. Thanksgiving was my mother's idea. A remote cabin, no city noise, no emails, no ghosts from the divorce. Just family, food, and a chance to feel human again. The cabin belonged to my uncle. It sat 3 hours north, tucked between black pine trees and a frozen lake that looked like a sheet of metal under the cloudy sky. Miles offered to drive me. I said no. He didn't push. I understand, he said. You need to feel like your choices are still yours. It was exactly the right thing to say. That was the problem. The rain followed me out of the city. It crawled across the windshield in thin, nervous lines. My phone buzzed twice on the passenger seat. Unknown number. No message. At the cabin, my mother hugged me too tightly. My brother Nate carried bags inside. My aunt played old jazz from a tiny speaker while onions hissed in butter and the oven breathed heat into the wooden room. For a while, I almost felt normal. Then the first guest arrived. A woman stood on the porch at dusk. She was young, maybe 25, dark hair damp from rain. No coat, no bag. Her hands hung at her sides. My uncle opened the door. "Can I help you?" She looked past him into the cabin. At me. Her face was empty, but not blank. Empty like a house after everyone has moved out. "Do you know her?" my mother asked. I shook my head. The woman stepped inside when my uncle moved back, as if she had been invited. "What's your name?" Nate asked. She didn't speak. Her shoes made no sound on the floorboards. We thought she was in shock. Lost. Maybe hurt. There was no cell service except near the upstairs window. The roads were bad. The nearest town was 40 minutes away. My mother wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. The woman did not thank her. She sat at the dining table. At the place nobody had sat. Then the second guest came. A man in a navy suit, soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead. He knocked once. Softly. No one had seen headlights. No one had heard a car. He came in and sat beside the woman. He did not speak. His eyes moved around the room with slow precision. The third arrived after dark. An older woman with silver earrings and red lipstick, holding a cracked phone with a dead screen. She stood in the doorway while rain fell behind her like static. My aunt whispered, "This is insane." My mother called the police from the upstairs window, where one bar of service appeared and vanished like a pulse. The dispatcher said the storm had knocked trees across the north road. A car would come when it could. Until then, we were told to keep everyone warm, keep everyone calm. So we did what polite people do when fear enters the room. We fed it. Thanksgiving dinner became a ceremony of pretending. Turkey, potatoes, cranberry sauce, candles trembling in the draft, rain tapping the windows, jazz playing too softly under the clink of forks. The silent guests sat among us. They accepted plates. They did not eat. When spoken to, they only looked. Not confused. Not frightened. Waiting. My phone buzzed under the table. Unknown number. A photo appeared. It showed our dining room from outside, through the rain-streaked window. My breath stopped. The angle was low from the tree line. I looked at the glass. Nothing there but darkness and our own reflections. Then came the text. They always sit where they belong. I stood so fast my chair scraped backward. "What?" Nate asked. I showed him. His face changed. The room seemed to tilt. My uncle locked the doors. Nate checked the windows. My mother cried quietly near the stove, one hand pressed against her mouth. The silent guests remained seated. Still. Patient. Like actors who had not been given their next line. Then the young woman lifted her hand. She pointed at my mother. Not dramatically. Just enough. My mother looked down. On the inside of her wrist, in dark blue ink, was a small symbol. A circle cut by a line. "What is that?" she whispered. Nobody had drawn it. Nobody had touched her. The man in the navy suit pointed at Nate. On the back of my brother's hand was another mark. 3 vertical lines. My aunt found hers near her collarbone. My uncle's was behind his ear. Each time, one of the silent guests pointed. Each time, a mark appeared somewhere impossible. Not wounds. Ink. Signatures. The kind of mark someone makes when claiming luggage. Then all 3 silent guests stood. The candles bent in the draft. The jazz clicked off. The room filled with the sound of rain and our breathing. The young woman walked to me. She smelled like cold air and cheap vanilla shampoo. She leaned close. For 1 second, I thought she might speak. Instead, she placed something in my palm. A small silver button. From my old winter coat. The one Daniel had once ripped during an argument, then apologized for with flowers. I had thrown that coat away before I moved. I closed my fist around the button. When I looked up, the silent guests were gone. The front door was still locked. The windows were still latched. But later, the police found the cellar door open beneath the back porch. And footprints in the mud. Many of them. Some fresh. Some older. A lot older. The officers arrived just after midnight. Their flashlights cut through fog and rain. They searched the woods. They searched the cabin. They took statements while my family sat under blankets, marked and trembling, trying to explain things that sounded impossible when said aloud. No one believed the guests had vanished. Not really. People don't vanish. They leave through doors you didn't know existed. I gave the police my phone. The photo. The texts. The unknown numbers. One officer, a woman named Harris, looked at the silver button in an evidence bag and asked if anyone might have wanted to frighten me. I almost laughed. Where do you start with a question like that? By morning, they found cameras. One in the smoke detector. One above the porch light. One inside the carved wooden clock near the kitchen. My uncle kept saying, that clock came with the cabin. But it hadn't. My mother remembered then. A delivery had arrived 2 weeks earlier. No sender. She thought one of us had ordered it. I checked my dating app. Miles was gone. His profile had disappeared. His number was disconnected. His photos returned no results when searched. Except one. A local news article from 4 years earlier. Different name. Different city. Same face. The article was about a woman named Claire Anson who had reported a stalking campaign after leaving an abusive relationship. Fake profiles. Spoofed emails. Voice notes made from old videos. Cameras in rented apartments. Her friends receiving messages that sounded like her. Then Claire disappeared. The case remained open. I read the article in the police station while fluorescent lights buzzed above me and vending machines hummed against the wall. My hands went cold. Claire had dark hair. The first silent guest. The woman at our table. Alive. Not a ghost. A victim. Or someone forced to play one. Detective Harris found more. Miles wasn't Miles. He had been Aaron Vale once. Or Peter Moss. Or Julian Reed. The names changed. The method didn't. He built people. Not just fake profiles. Whole emotional architectures. He studied women who were lonely, relocated, recovering. He entered through the softest wound. He learned routines from fitness apps, coffee reward accounts, Venmo captions, old Instagram posts, leaked passwords, metadata buried in photos. He didn't break into your life. He assembled it around himself. The silent guests were part of a pattern. People he had targeted before. People he was targeting next. Some had been paid. Some coerced. Some manipulated into believing they were helping expose someone else. Each one had been given instructions through burner phones and voice-cloned messages. Sit at the table. Do not speak. Point when told. Leave when the music stops. The marks were not impossible either. Temporary tattoo ink transferred by napkins, blankets, chair backs, the inside of coat sleeves. Elegant. Cruel. Designed to make a family doubt reality. Designed to make me look unstable. Designed to make him necessary. Because the next message came from Miles 3 hours after I left the station. You're frightened. That's understandable. I stared at the screen in my apartment, where every appliance sounded too loud. The refrigerator hummed. The radiator clicked. Someone upstairs walked slowly across the floor. Another message. I'm the only one who knows how scared you really are. I called Detective Harris. This time, I didn't rationalize. This time, I didn't explain him into kindness. The police traced the number to a burner near Marlowe Street. My old route home. The one I had stopped taking. They asked me to stay with family. But before I could leave, my phone buzzed again. A voice note. Miles. Soft. Calm. Almost sad. Evie opened the door. We should talk before they make you afraid of me. The hallway outside my apartment went silent. No footsteps. No elevator. No distant music through the walls. Just breathing. Not mine. I backed into the kitchen and took a knife from the drawer, though my hand shook so badly it clicked against the counter. "Evie," he said through the door. Gentle. Wounded. "I never hurt you." That sentence did something to me. It opened an old room. Daniel's voice lived there. My own excuses lived there. Every time I had called fear confusion. Every time I had mistaken invasion for intimacy. I put the knife down. Then I picked up my phone and pressed the emergency call Detective Harris had told me to keep ready. "I know," I said through the door, keeping my voice steady. "You only watched." A pause. Then a small laugh. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just disappointed. "You make watching sound ugly." "It is." "No," he said. "It's devotion without permission." The lock moved. Slowly. He had a key. Of course he had a key. But the chain held. His eye appeared in the gap. Pale brown. Observant. Still beautiful in the worst way. "You were lonely," he whispered. "I was. You wanted someone to notice." "I did." His gaze softened. "There's no crime in being known." "No," I said. "But there is a crime in stealing the map." Behind him, down the hall, footsteps rushed upward. Police. Real footsteps. Heavy and human. Miles heard them too. For the first time, his face changed. Not fear. I think it was irritation. As if the world had broken character. He ran. They caught him in the stairwell. He had 2 phones, 3 IDs, a small recording device, and a key ring with copies from apartments I had never seen. In his backpack, they found printed photos of my family's cabin, seating charts, Thanksgiving menu notes, my mother's handwriting, copied from an old recipe card she had posted online years ago, and a folder labeled, "Silent Guests, Final Table." Afterward, people asked how I was. I never knew what to say. Alive was true. Safe was more complicated. My apartment felt contaminated, so I left it. I changed my number. Deleted accounts. Turned off location sharing on apps I didn't remember installing. I learned how much of a person can be reconstructed from crumbs. A playlist. A receipt. A reflection in a window. A nickname typed once in 2016. My family's marks faded after a few days. Mine did not. Not on my skin. Inside. Sometimes, when rain taps the glass at night, I still hear the soft jazz from the cabin. I still see those silent faces at the table, not ghosts, not visions, just people pulled into someone else's obsession. That is what haunts me most. Not that evil can watch from the dark, but that it can speak gently. It can remember your coffee order. It can call you by the name you miss hearing. It can study your pain so carefully that, for a while, it feels like love. I used to think privacy meant hiding secrets. Now I think it means protecting the ordinary things. The route home. The light left on. The song played when you are sad. The small details that prove you belong to yourself. Because obsession does not always begin with a threat. Sometimes it begins with attention. And attention in the wrong hands becomes a key. Story 7. Rain streaked the windows, neon signs reflecting in puddles along the quiet streets. I walked slowly, coat collar up, letting the chill settle in my bones. My breakup was still raw, the apartment silent and hollow. Cafes smelled faintly of coffee and wet pastry, distant jazz drifting through a cracked door. Footsteps echoed in empty hallways as I passed. I felt broken. Thanksgiving was supposed to be grounding. My family's house smelled of roasting turkey, candle wax, and pine. I thought it might tether me back to something normal, something real. But as soon as I sat at the table, I noticed a subtle wrongness. My mother smiled too brightly. My father hummed under his breath in an off rhythm. The turkey on the table seemed to twitch. I tried to rationalize. I told myself it made sense. Maybe I was tired. The first repetition came hours later, or maybe minutes. I woke up in the living room, the table already set. Rain still tapped the windows in the same pattern. Neon reflections pooled across the floor. The same distant jazz played from the cafe down the street. My family sat in the same positions. But my brother was missing. I froze. I ran to the basement. A body. Familiar. And yet, unplaceable. My rational mind screamed. Impossible. Coincidence. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to escape the fear gnawing in my chest. Maybe I was overthinking. I told myself it made sense. Mara appeared the next repetition. Calm, gentle, comforting. She had moved to the town recently and became a lifeline. She knew my routines, the cafe I always lingered in, the song I hummed walking home. She smiled softly, the kind of warmth that made isolation bearable. But the impossible details followed. She knew my old nickname, the time I left the apartment, the number of steps to the first street lamp. Every subtle act, every private thought, catalogued, observed. I began documenting everything. Phone buzzing with messages I hadn't received. Emails drafted I hadn't typed. Metadata showing locations I didn't visit. The loops weren't just temporal, they were orchestrated, observed, manipulated. Each repetition introduced horror. The turkey screamed, a high-pitched, unnatural wail. Shadows in the corners stretched, leaning toward the table. Floorboards creaked beneath invisible feet. Rain and neon played across the walls in uncanny reflection. I tried to escape, running down streets slick with rain, footprints reflected in puddles. Every attempt failed. I returned to the table each time, the loop insisting, unyielding. Whispers began. Soft at first, almost indistinct. Only the guilty can break it. Only the first can set it right. I remembered. The first death. My hand, trembling. The accident I caused months ago, forgotten or erased from memory. The loop wasn't supernatural. It was consequence given physical form, demanding acknowledgement, punishment, understanding. Mara leaned close, calm, observing. You caused this. Only you can stop it. I wanted to rationalize her insight. She's protecting me. She knows what to do. I told myself it made sense. The loops accelerated. More subtle horrors. My sister missing one repetition. A shadow appearing in the hallway. Floorboards humming with unnatural cadence. Each time, the table reset, candles flickering the same pattern, the turkey twitching as though anticipating the next repetition. I confronted my own memory. The first death, the act I had blocked out, the secret I had buried, had triggered this endless loop. Only by facing it, acknowledging it, could the cycles end. I ran to the basement in one loop, hands trembling, facing the scene as it had been. My own voice whispered my guilt, cataloging every error, every lie, every hidden thought. The turkey, still at the table, watched, its silence more accusatory than any words. When I confessed, acknowledging my act and its consequences, the loop fractured. Rain fell naturally on neon streets. Shadows retreated. Floorboards creaked normally. The distant jazz played at an irregular, comforting cadence. Police arrived hours later. Evidence of previous repetitions traced through burned-out cameras, old metadata, emails. The loops were gone, the horror ended, but the weight remained. Mara had vanished before confrontation, leaving only traces, attention, observation, manipulation. I survived, but the apartment, the streets, the neon reflections, they haunt me still. Shadows stretch too long. Reflections lag behind movement. Appliances hum with subtle reminders of observation. Trust is fragile. Privacy is an illusion. Memory can be weaponized. Boundaries blur. I walk the streets carefully now, puddles reflecting more than just my face. They reflect the potential of observation, the persistence of guilt. I survived, but I am not the same. And sometimes when rain pools on neon streets, I whisper to myself, who observes while you think time moves forward? Who catalogs your guilt, your mistakes, your memory? And what price do we pay when the past demands to be acknowledged in every repetition? I don't know, and I fear I may never know. Story 8. The blizzard came fast. White ribbons of snow cut across the streetlights. Wind rattled the old window frames. The apartment smelled like boiled cabbage and burnt sugar. My hands were raw from shoveling the walkway, but I didn't feel the cold. Not really. I had moved here after the divorce. 3 months in a city I didn't recognize. A job I tolerated, a life in pieces. Thanksgiving was supposed to be quiet. My mother, my younger brother, me. Minimal conversation, plenty of distance. And then the knock came. Not timid, not polite, deliberate, slow, insistent. I opened the door. A man stood in the snow. Tall, gray coat plastered with flakes. Hair wet, eyes too clear. He smiled like he had been expected. "Sorry," he said. I don't have anywhere. Could you maybe let me warm up? Just for a bit." My mother's voice floated behind me. Of course. I wanted to believe it. He stepped inside. Snow dripped from his coat onto the hardwood. The apartment smelled faintly of pine and something else I couldn't name, like cinnamon and iron. He shook off his coat, and the warmth spread, unnatural, almost magnetic. He introduced himself as Elias. Elias. The first thing I noticed was the calm. Not the kind of calm that reassures. The kind that makes you question whether the storm outside is real. He moved through the apartment as if he had lived here before. Adjusted the thermostat, hummed softly while he boiled water, asked for nothing, noticed everything. "I like how you keep your coffee mugs in a row," he said. "It says something about how you want order when everything feels messy." I looked down at my hands, stained with potato juice. How could he know? I told myself it made sense. Maybe I'd mentioned it once. Maybe it was luck. He offered to cook. Said he was good with food. Said it would warm everyone up. The first meal was simple. Soup, bread, butter. But after the first spoonful, my brother snarled at a minor comment from my mother. Sharp, unnatural. His hands shook. Eyes hard. I frowned. She laughed it off. "It's cold, they're hungry." I wanted to believe it. The second course arrived. Roast vegetables, pies. Each bite seemed to change them. Not gradually. Suddenly. My mother dropped her fork. Her gaze cut across the table. My brother clenched the knife. I felt the air shift, heavy and sour. "Maybe it's the storm," I whispered to myself. Elias smiled quietly. Watched. Waited. That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom. Wind howled against the windows. Floorboards creaked. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voice note. Soft, calm. He said my name. Detailed things. My favorite cafe, the book I'd left on the counter, a song I hummed in the shower. Things I hadn't shared. Ever. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. Maybe I was overthinking. I saw him in the kitchen the next morning. Alone. Preparing tea. The counter's immaculate. The hum of the fridge. The smell of roasted herbs. I couldn't look away. He knew the patterns of my family. The way we argued. Our routines. Our fears. "You have a soft spot for small kindnesses," he said. "Even when people don't notice." I shivered. Not cold. Not fear. Something inside me uncoiled. A memory I hadn't realized was tied to trust. By the second day, I caught him moving through the apartment at odd hours. Not stealthy, not hiding, just present, always observing. I followed him once. He turned toward me, smile faint, eyes sharp. "You don't need to hide," he said. "I'm already here." I told myself it made sense. Guests sometimes wandered. People were curious. On the third day, the violence escalated. My brother punched a wall. My mother broke a chair. I froze in the doorway, soup spilled across my hand. My pulse thumped like a drum in the silent apartment. I wanted to believe it was hunger. Maybe it was the storm. The night came down heavy. Blizzard against the glass, street lights glowing like fading neon in fog. I checked my phone. No signal. No messages. No internet. I went to the kitchen. Elias was there, slicing bread. Calm. Gentle. A soft jazz track through a hidden speaker. "You're tired," he said. "Let me help you rest." Something in me snapped. I grabbed my phone, tried to call 911. No signal. I realized then what I should have noticed before. Every door had been locked differently. Every window latched extra. We were inside. I followed him down the hallway. He paused by the pantry, opened it. Inside, shelves of cans, jars, dried herbs, and a notebook. Open. Filled with names, dates, addresses, social media handles. Notes about habits, preferences, emotional triggers. My mother's handwriting. My brother's. My own. I wanted to believe it was research. Maybe I was overthinking. But then he looked at me. Eyes calm. Too calm. Smiling, but not warm. I like to understand people, he said. Fully. To help them. I didn't move. You've been lonely, he whispered. I can fix that. I ran. Through the apartment, doors jamming under my hands. Snow outside was waist-high. Sirens in the distance. But they never seemed to get closer. I found a small balcony door. Opened it. Stepped into the storm. Snow hit my face, wind tore at my coat. I heard him behind me, footsteps soft but precise. You can't leave, he said. Voice carrying, calm, intimate. You'll miss the warmth. I did not look back. I found a neighbor who let me in. Phone finally working. Called the police. When they arrived, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. My mother and brother sitting at the table. Silent. Eyes glazed. Plates in front of them untouched. Elias was gone. No trace. No coat. No footprints in the snow. Just the lingering smell of cinnamon and iron. Weeks later, we discovered his online presence. Hundreds of fake profiles, dating apps, social media accounts, voice notes cloned from therapy sessions. Metadata analysis revealed he had been tracking us for months, maybe years. He knew schedules, fears, old addresses, favorite coffee cups, forgotten songs. The police never found him. Not fully. Just evidence, patterns, methods. A digital ghost collecting habits, building profiles, learning to mimic warmth. We survived. We moved. Changed numbers. Blocked accounts. But the apartment, the smell, the storm, they stayed with me. Sometimes I wake to the buzz of my phone, expecting him. Sometimes I hesitate before sharing a story, thinking about who might be listening, watching, cataloging. I wanted to trust. I wanted to believe warmth was kindness, food was comfort, strangers were just lost. I tell myself it is safe now, but safety is fragile. And some strangers, they come to the door carrying more than snow and hunger. They come carrying pieces of you thought were yours alone. And when you open that door, even a little, sometimes you never get them back. Story 9. Thanksgiving smelled like rain before it smelled like food. Cold rain on wool coats. Wet leaves tracked into the hallway. Neon from the corner pharmacy bleeding red across the windows. The city outside looked bruised and reflective, every puddle holding a distorted version of us. I stood in my mother's kitchen with a carving knife in my hand, pretending I wasn't afraid of being there. My divorce had been final for 9 days. 9 days since I moved into a studio apartment above a closed travel agency. 9 days of humming appliances, unanswered emails, late-night phone buzzes, and the kind of silence that makes you hear your own breathing too clearly. My family said I needed people. People were exactly what exhausted me. Clara, my mother called from the dining room. Can you bring the gravy? I looked down at the silver boat on the counter. The gravy was darker than usual. Almost black. It moved when I wasn't touching it. Not a ripple. A shift. Like something turning over in sleep. I blinked. Steam rose from it slowly, carrying thyme, pepper, and something metallic. Clara? Coming. I told myself it was lighting. Candlelight. Exhaustion. Maybe I was overthinking. I wanted to believe it. I carried the gravy into the dining room. Everyone was already seated. My mother at one end, too elegant for the sadness she carried. My brother Aaron beside his wife, Paige. My Aunt Ruth, who drank too early and judged too quietly. My cousin Ben scrolling under the table. And beside me, in the empty chair that used to belong to my husband, sat Adrian. Not my husband. My date. That word still felt ridiculous. I had met him on a dating app 2 weeks earlier. He was soft-spoken, careful, a grief counselor who liked old jazz and rainy walks. He never rushed me. He never asked for more than I offered. You don't have to perform healing for me, he had said on our first cafe date, while rain tapped the glass and saxophone music drifted through the speakers. I trusted him because he didn't seem to want anything. That should have frightened me more. At dinner, he touched my wrist gently. You're shaking, he whispered. I'm fine. No, he said. You're managing. The word was too accurate. Across the table, Aaron lifted his glass. To surviving another family holiday. We laughed because families laugh when nobody knows how to tell the truth. My mother poured gravy over the turkey. The room changed. Not dramatically. The candles flickered. The radiator clicked. Rain tapped harder against the windows. The soft jazz from the kitchen speaker warped for half a second, stretching one piano note into something low and human. Then the gravy moved. It slid across the turkey like liquid shadow, thicker than sauce should be. It gathered at the edge of the platter, paused, then curled toward my mother's hand. She pulled back. What on earth? A whisper came from the table. Not loud, not from one direction, from everywhere. Tell the truth. Nobody moved. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. It knows what you hide. I looked at Adrian. His eyes were on the gravy. Calm. Too calm. Aunt Ruth laughed sharply. Very funny. Who set this up? The gravy answered. Ruth took the money. Silence fell. Folks stopped. The refrigerator hummed from the kitchen. Outside, a siren passed through the wet streets and disappeared. Aunt Ruth's face hardened. What money? The gravy darkened. The surface trembled. My mother whispered, Ruth? It's nonsense, Ruth snapped. Then the gravy spilled from the platter. Not fast. Not messy. Purposeful. A black stream crossed the white tablecloth toward Ruth's plate. She stood, but her chair caught behind her. For 1 second, shadows climbed around her wrists like wet ribbons. She screamed. Then the lights went out. When they came back, Ruth was gone. Her chair lay on its side. Her wine glass spun slowly on the table. The gravy had returned to the boat. No stain. No trace. Ben began crying. Paige whispered, What just happened? Aaron looked under the table. Ruth? Ruth. Adrian stood and moved to the doorway. We need to stay calm. I turned on him. Why are you calm? His face softened. Because panic helps whoever is doing this. Whoever. Not whatever. That word anchored me. I wanted an explanation with wires and speakers and human hands. I wanted the world to remain cruel but physical. I told myself it made sense. Then the gravy whispered again. Aaron has another phone. My brother went still. Paige turned to him slowly. What? The gravy bubbled once. Hotel receipts. Voice notes. Deleted messages. Aaron's face emptied. Paige stood. Tell me that isn't true. Aaron swallowed. This is insane. Tell me. He looked at the table. No. The lights flickered. The gravy slid from the boat again. Aaron backed away, knocking into the sideboard. No, wait. The room filled with the smell of burnt sugar and rain. The lights cut out. A thud. A gasp. When they came back, Aaron was gone too. Paige's chair was empty. Not gone. She had fainted. I could hear myself breathing. Short. Thin. Like I was trapped under glass. My mother began praying under her breath. Ben kept saying, I want to go home, though he was already home. Adrian moved beside me. Clara, he said quietly, listen to me. This isn't supernatural. How do you know? Because it's using secrets. Real ones. Collected ones. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown message. Ask Adrian how he knows your sleeping pill dosage. I stared at the screen. Adrian glanced at it. For the first time, his calm cracked. Only slightly. I stepped away from him. He raised both hands. Clara, answer it. His voice lowered. Not here. That was enough. The spiral tightened. The gravy whispered my childhood nickname. Little Crow. My father had called me that when I was 6 because I collected shiny things from sidewalks. Bottle caps. Coins. Broken earrings. He died when I was 11. No one at that table knew. Not even my mother remembered. The gravy whispered again. You still keep his watch in a sock drawer. My mother looked at me, confused. I had never told anyone. The table seemed to breathe. Rain. Candles. Jazz. The humming kitchen light. The faint buzz of phones receiving messages no one wanted to read. I said, "Who are you?" The gravy replied in my father's voice, "Clara, don't lie to yourself." I almost broke then, because grief is not intelligent. It does not ask whether the voice is real. It only turns toward it. Adrian caught my arm. "Don't listen." I pulled away. "Don't touch me." His jaw tightened. Then Paige woke and whispered, "There are speakers." We all turned. She was staring at the chandelier. Tiny black dots had been placed between the crystal drops. Cameras. Speakers. The room snapped into a new shape. Not haunted. Watched. Ben found another device under his chair. My mother found one behind the mirror. I grabbed the gravy boat with a napkin and tilted it toward the candlelight. The black liquid gleamed. Not gravy. Something oily and magnetic mixed with thick sauce. It moved because of small magnets hidden beneath the table, under the plates, inside the serving tray. A performance. A trap. Then my mother said, "Where are Ruth and Aaron?" No one answered. The floor beneath Ruth's chair had a seam. So did the panel near Aaron's sideboard. Hidden doors. Old house. Old renovations. New mechanisms. They hadn't been absorbed. They had been taken. That was almost worse. My phone buzzed. "Good. You always were the clever one." I looked at Adrian. He was staring at his own phone. His face had gone pale. "What?" I asked. He showed me. A message from the same number. "She's turning on you. Begin phase 2. I stepped back. "Clara," he said, "I didn't know it would be like this." The room went quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause. "What did you do?" He closed his eyes. I thought it was an intervention. My laugh came out broken. An intervention? For families carrying secrets. That's what they said. A therapeutic exposure experience. Who said? He looked toward the hallway. The front door opened. A woman stepped inside wearing my mother's beige coat. For 1 second, my mind rejected her. Then she took off the coat. It was Elise. The woman from Adrian's profile pictures. Except she was not Elise. She was the person who had messaged me from 3 different dating app accounts after the divorce. The widow who understood loneliness. The therapist who commented on my insomnia. The stranger who knew my coffee order, my walking route, the song I played when I cried in the shower. She smiled at me. Soft. Patient. "Hello, Clara." Adrian whispered. "Mara?" She ignored him. Her eyes never left mine. "You were doing so well." My mother gripped the table. "Where are my children?" "Safe," Mara said. "Assuming they stay honest." Her voice was calm, educated, intimate. That was the horror of her. Not madness. Precision. "You built this," I said. "I revealed it." "No. You stalked us." Mara's expression turned almost sad. People use that word when they don't like being understood. The police sirens were faint at first. Mara heard them too. Her eyes shifted toward Adrian. "You called." He shook his head. I raised my phone. "I did." She looked disappointed. "You always need external permission to trust yourself." That sentence hit too close. She knew it would. Detective Harris arrived with 3 officers through the front door, while another team entered from the back garden. Later, I learned they had already been watching Mara after similar complaints in 2 other cities. Fake therapeutic groups. Staged hauntings, digital surveillance, voice cloning, burner phones, hidden cameras, families manipulated into public confession, blackmail, and control. The gravy was her signature. A symbol, she called it. Truth made visible. Lies consumed. In the basement, police found Ruth and Aaron alive, restrained in separate rooms beneath the dining room. Dazed. Terrified. Not injured badly, but changed in that instant way fear can age a person. Mara did not run. She stood in the dining room while officers cuffed her, candlelight sliding over her face. "You think truth saved you," she said to me. "No," I replied. "Evidence did." For the first time, she blinked. Months have passed. Thanksgiving no longer smells like food. It smells like rain. Candle wax. Old fear. Aaron and Paige separated. Ruth returned the money she had stolen from my mother's account. My mother sold the house. Adrian was charged lightly, then disappeared from my life with a long apology I never answered. I moved again. New locks. No smart speaker. No dating apps. At night, my apartment is still not silent. The refrigerator hums. Pipes click. My phone buzzes sometimes, and my body remembers before my mind does. I learned that secrets are not always poison. Sometimes they are bandages. Sometimes they are boundaries. The people who demand total honesty are not always seeking truth. Sometimes they are seeking leverage. Privacy is not deception. Trust is not confession. Love does not require you to bleed your history onto the table so someone else can decide whether you deserve safety. An obsession does not always look like desire. Sometimes it looks like concern. Sometimes it wears a calm voice. Sometimes it pours itself over a family dinner, dark and shining, and whispers that it only wants the truth. But truth without consent is not intimacy. It is consumption, and some people are starving. Story 10. The blizzard came fast. White ribbons of snow cut across the streetlights. Wind rattled the old window frames. The apartment smelled like boiled cabbage and burnt sugar. My hands were raw from shoveling the walkway, but I didn't feel the cold. Not really. I had moved here after the divorce. 3 months in a city I didn't recognize. A job I tolerated, a life in pieces. Thanksgiving was supposed to be quiet. My mother, my younger brother, me. Minimal conversation, plenty of distance. And then the knock came. Not timid, not polite, deliberate, slow, insistent. I opened the door. A man stood in the snow. Tall, gray coat plastered with flakes. Hair wet, eyes too clear. He smiled like he had been expected. "Sorry," he said. I don't have anywhere. Could you maybe let me warm up? Just for a bit." My mother's voice floated behind me. Of course. I wanted to believe it. He stepped inside. Snow dripped from his coat onto the hardwood. The apartment smelled faintly of pine and something else I couldn't name, like cinnamon and iron. He shook off his coat, and the warmth spread unnatural, almost magnetic. He introduced himself as Elias. Elias. The first thing I noticed was the calm. Not the kind of calm that reassures. The kind that makes you question whether the storm outside is real. He moved through the apartment as if he had lived here before. Adjusted the thermostat, hummed softly while he boiled water, asked for nothing, noticed everything. "I like how you keep your coffee mugs in a row," he said. "It says something about how you want order when everything feels messy." I looked down at my hands, stained with potato juice. How could he know? I told myself it made sense. Maybe I'd mentioned it once. Maybe it was luck. He offered to cook. Said he was good with food. Said it would warm everyone up. The first meal was simple. Soup, bread, butter. But after the first spoonful, my brother snarled at a minor comment from my mother. Sharp, unnatural. His hands shook. Eyes hard. I frowned. She laughed it off. "It's cold, they're hungry." I wanted to believe it. The second course arrived. Roast, vegetables, pies. Each bite seemed to change them. Not gradually. Suddenly. My mother dropped her fork. Her gaze cut across the table. My brother clenched the knife. I felt the air shift, heavy and sour. "Maybe it's the storm," I whispered to myself. Elias smiled quietly. Watched. Waited. That night, I lay awake in my old bedroom. Wind howled against the windows. Floorboards creaked. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. A voice note. Soft, calm. He said my name. Detailed things. My favorite cafe, the book I'd left on the counter, a song I hummed in the shower. Things I hadn't shared. Ever. I wanted to believe it was coincidence. Maybe I was overthinking. I saw him in the kitchen the next morning. Alone. Preparing tea. The counter's immaculate. The hum of the fridge. The smell of roasted herbs. I couldn't look away. He knew the patterns of my family. The way we argued. Our routines. Our fears. "You have a soft spot for small kindnesses," he said. "Even when people don't notice." I shivered. Not cold. Not fear. Something inside me uncoiled. A memory I hadn't realized was tied to trust. By the second day, I caught him moving through the apartment at odd hours. Not stealthy, not hiding, just present, always observing. I followed him once. He turned toward me, smile faint, eyes sharp. "You don't need to hide," he said. "I'm already here." I told myself it made sense. Guests sometimes wandered. People were curious. On the third day, the violence escalated. My brother punched a wall. My mother broke a chair. I froze in the doorway, soup spilled across my hand. My pulse thumped like a drum in the silent apartment. I wanted to believe it was hunger. Maybe it was the storm. The night came down heavy. Blizzard against the glass, streetlights glowing like fading neon in fog. I checked my phone. No signal. No messages. No internet. I went to the kitchen. Elias was there, slicing bread. Calm. Gentle. A soft jazz track through a hidden speaker. "You're tired," he said. "Let me help you rest." Something in me snapped. I grabbed my phone, tried to call 911. No signal. I realized then what I should have noticed before. Every door had been locked differently. Every window latched extra. We were inside. I followed him down the hallway. He paused by the pantry, opened it. Inside, shelves of cans, jars, dried herbs, and a notebook. Open. Filled with names, dates, addresses, social media handles. Notes about habits, preferences, emotional triggers. My mother's handwriting. My brother's. My own. I wanted to believe it was research. Maybe I was overthinking. But then he looked at me. Eyes calm. Too calm. Smiling, but not warm. "I like to understand people," he said. "Fully. To help them." I didn't move. "You've been lonely," he whispered. "I can fix that." I ran. Through the apartment, doors jamming under my hands. Snow outside was waist high. Sirens in the distance. But they never seemed to get closer. I found a small balcony door. Opened it. Stepped into the storm. Snow hit my face, wind tore at my coat. I heard him behind me, footsteps soft but precise. "You can't leave," he said, voice carrying calm, intimate. "You'll miss the warmth." I did not look back. I found a neighbor who let me in. Phone finally working. Called the police. When they arrived, the apartment was quiet. Too quiet. My mother and brother sitting at the table. Silent. Eyes glazed. Plates in front of them untouched. Elias was gone. No trace. No coat. No footprints in the snow. Just the lingering smell of cinnamon and iron. Weeks later, we discovered his online presence. Hundreds of fake profiles, dating apps, social media accounts, voice notes cloned from therapy sessions. Metadata analysis revealed he had been tracking us for months, maybe years. He knew schedules, fears, old addresses, favorite coffee cups, forgotten songs. The police never found him. Not fully. Just evidence, patterns, methods. A digital ghost collecting habits, building profiles, learning to mimic warmth. We survived. We moved. Changed numbers. Blocked accounts. But the apartment, the smell, the storm, they stayed with me. Sometimes I wake to the buzz of my phone, expecting him. Sometimes I hesitate before sharing a story, thinking about who might be listening, watching, cataloging. I wanted to trust. I wanted to believe warmth was kindness, food was comfort, strangers were just lost. I tell myself it is safe now, but safety is fragile. And some strangers, they come to the door carrying more than snow and hunger. They come carrying pieces of you thought were yours alone. And when you open that door, even a little, sometimes you never get them back.